Hello everyone. In the previous video we discussed about cellular respiration and what are the parts of cellular respiration, and which were glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the oxidative phosphorylation, which included the chemiosmosis and the electron transport chain. Now in this video we are going to discuss about one of the most important processes that occurs in this world, and without this process I wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be here, because this is the process which helps us to live, because through this process we get oxygen, which is the key thing for our lives. So oxygen. Now so let's begin. So first of all, if we look at the word, so we will able to get a picture of what are we dealing with here. So the word photo is derived from a Greek word which means light, and synthesis means to make or to put together. So to make. Now, so you might be thinking, okay, we are making something with the help of light. So but what are we making here? The process of photosynthesis is really simple. And it occurs in plants. So it occurs in plants and some bacteria and all those organisms which have a particular pigment in them, a particular organelle in them. So it occurs mostly in plants. Now, so the process is it's really complex actually, but they have really narrowed it down to just a simple equation which if you can memorize it, it will be good just to know what's going on here. So what we are doing actually is we're taking carbon dioxide along with water, and we are making glucose, and we are also making some water at the end too, and along with water we also have oxygen, which is released through the plant, which we breathe. Now if you were to balance this equation, it would be 6, and so it would be 6 right here, and just balance this oxygen, 6 right here. Then it would be 6 right here. No, let's make it 6 right here, and then no, here should be 12. So let me erase that. It should be 12 right here. And here it should be 6. So this is the equation of photosynthesis. Normally you don't see this water molecule, the 6 moles of water right here, because at the net, if we subtract 6 on both sides of this equation, we usually end up at 6 molecules of water. So this is the most this is not usually the format when you see the equation, but we do get water at the end. So water acts as a reactant as well as a product. Now photosynthesis, it's a process which we take carbon dioxide and water, and with the help of light energy, which is a source of energy, we take these two molecules right here in the presence of light energy, and we are able to generate glucose, water, and oxygen. Now if I were to say, like, just we subtract these, so then the equation would look something like this. The equation would look something like this. Now C6 H12O6. So now the simplest form which we usually see in our textbooks is this form of the equation right here. Now if you notice something, this equation is just the opposite of cellular respiration. if you remember, in cellular respiration, we took glucose in the presence of O2, and we broke it down into carbon dioxide, water, and we also released some energy. And now, but in photosynthesis, you can imagine it's just the opposite. We're taking an energy and using these two products to make glucose and oxygen and water. Now, so plants usually make their own food, make glucose from this process, and then this glucose goes into the cellular respiration process, and it goes all the way back. It goes through the cellular respiration where it's broken down, and then it makes its ATP, and it makes its energy. So actually, the next thing which I want to tell you is that if you notice the equation right here, we have oxygen along with carbon dioxide, and we also have oxygen along with water. So it puzzles scientists to wonder, okay, which oxygen right here is O2? I mean, so is this oxygen is it coming from water, or is it coming from carbon dioxide? And what they did was, they took an isotope of oxygen, O18. Now, an isotope is just the same element, but it has a different number of neutrons in it. So if you see the structure of an atom, it has protons and neutrons in the nucleus, and around the nucleus you have electrons going all around it. So an isotope means it has the same number of protons, but it has different number of neutrons. So it basically is the same element but different version of an element. So they took O18, merged it with this carbon dioxide here, and observed. But when they observed, they weren't able to see O18 as liberated as oxygen molecule. So then they performed another experiment in which they combined O18 with water, and as they saw the oxygen being liberated, it was the O18, it was the isotope. So they came to the conclusion that, okay, the oxygen which we are getting is from the water and not from carbon dioxide. So if I were to draw another thing which I wanted to introduce to you is about that photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a redox reaction. So you might be thinking, okay, what do you mean by a redox reaction? And in the previous video, I mentioned you a little bit about what redox is. So redox means basically it's red. It comes from reduction, which means to gain an electron. We discussed this in the first video of cellular respiration, and it's a good thing to review. And the ox is from oxidation, which means to gain. Reduction means to gain electron. Oxidation means to lose electron. And I mentioned it before that sometimes we see when an element when an element gains hydrogen, they say that it's being reduced, because when an element gains hydrogen, it also gains the electron with the hydrogen. So it basically means the same thing. So photosynthesis, they say it's a redox reaction. How is that? So let's just see. So let me write the equation. I'm not balancing right now. I'm just writing the elements, the reactants and the products. So if you notice, what is called reduction? Reduction means basically gaining an electron, or if we are gaining hydrogen, we are also gaining the hydrogen with the electron. So it's the same thing. So here you see carbon and oxygen right here. But if you see on the product side, you also have carbon and oxygen, but in the middle you have hydrogen, which means if it gained hydrogen, it's the same thing. It's reduction. It gained the hydrogen along with the electron with it. So carbon has been reduced, or carbon dioxide has been reduced. It has gained hydrogen, or the electron with the hydrogen. So here comes the red part, the reduction part. Now if you notice water right here, oxidation means losing electrons or losing hydrogen with the electron. So here we have water, and here we have only oxygen. We don't have any hydrogens with it. So here we observe oxidation taking place. So it makes so the statement is true. Photosynthesis is a redox reaction because reduction and oxidation are happening. So now let's go. So this was just the introduction of photosynthesis. If anybody asks, photosynthesis is a process in which we take carbon dioxide and water and we make glucose, water, and oxygen. So, but usually you see equation like this, not like this, because water, they cancel each other out. So the net amount of water is 6 moles of water. Now, if we move further on, so this equation right here is a really, you can imagine it as it's a really, they've narrowed it down. It's like a 50,000 feet overview of what's going on in photosynthesis. But photosynthesis is actually a quite deep process, and it has it's mainly been divided. It has been mainly divided into two kinds of reactions. One we call the light reaction, and the other we call the dark reaction. Now, in this video, I'm not going to explain the whole light reaction and the dark reaction. We're just going to get an overview of what these reactions are and what are they all about. And in the next video, we're going to study in detail about what the light reaction is actually all about. So just to get a little bit of overview of what's going on, light reaction, basically from the name you can imagine, okay, it needs light to happen. The reaction which happens in the presence of light. But when you study dark reaction, it sometimes becomes a little confusing because people think, okay, a dark reaction means it happens at night, but that's not the case. Dark reaction is sometimes also called light independent reaction. So now it's a little bit more clear. It means that, okay, this reaction happens in the presence of light, but this reaction doesn't need light. It can occur in the absence of light, but it happens during daytime. It means it happens in the time where light is present, but it doesn't necessarily need light to occur. So the dark reaction is also called the Kelvin cycle, after the name scientist Kelvin cycle. So basically you have three names for this reaction: dark reaction, light independent reaction, and Kelvin cycle. I usually prefer this name, the light independent, because it's more clear than this dark reaction, but it's up to you. Now, so let's get a little bit of overview of what this light reaction is. Light reaction, so if you want to write the definition of light reaction, so what's happening in the light reaction is that you are taking light energy and you're converting light energy into chemical energy, and along this process, when the light energy is being converted into chemical energy, you are taking water and you're splitting water into oxygen, and at the end you get an ATP molecule. Just for the reminder, ATP is the currency of energy. You get an ATP molecule and plus an NADPH. So NADPH is similar to NADH, which we studied in the which we discussed in the previous videos. It's also an energy carrying molecule. Now, so this is what light reaction is all about. You take light energy, you convert it into chemical energy. You convert it into chemical energy. Along that process, you're taking water and converting it into oxygen, and at the end you get an ATP, NADPH, and oxygen as well. So you can notice that in the light reaction, they're not generally making glucose, which we see in this equation right here. Now, a thing which I forgot to mention is that you might be thinking, okay, I understand the process of photosynthesis, this whole equation thing, and the light reaction, but where is it happening? Tell me, I mean, where's this location? But if you've seen the video of the introduction to the cell, So we discussed in that video about a organelle called the chloroplast. Now, if you look at the structure of the chloroplast looks something like this. It's a double membrane, and the membrane is phospholipids, the same membrane as our cell has. And inside the membrane, so this is a double membrane, it's an outer membrane, that's the inner membrane, and inside the membrane you have stacks of like this structure, like you have these stacks which are arranged in coin shape when you put coins on top of each other like this. My best attempt to draw them. Now these stacks are each individual, these coin shaped structures are called thylakoids. These individual coin shaped structures are called thylakoids, and if you in a stack of these thylakoids is called a granum, plural grana. And the fluid outside this structure is called the stroma. Now, light reaction occurs in the membranes of the thylakoids. So if I were to zoom in right here, so if the membrane, this is actually the membrane of the thylakoid, so the light reaction is actually occurring in the membranes of the thylakoid, and whereas the dark reaction is occurring in the stroma. So if I were to draw, so let me draw it here. So if I were to draw this a big chloroplast, if I were to draw this big chloroplast right here, so if I were to just draw this single structure of a single granum right here, and this is the stroma. So the light reaction occurs here. This is the place where the light reaction, LIGHT, light reaction occurs, and the stroma is this fluid, this base right here is filled with fluid, is called stroma, and this place is and in this place the dark reaction occurs. So we convert light energy into chemical energy, and water into oxygen, and ATP and NADPH. So you can, if you draw it, so we have light. This is a light ray. We have light energy striking here, and along this water goes in there, and it comes out. It's just a simplification I'm making here, and it comes out as oxygen, and along that process we are able to generate NADPH and ATP. And then in the stroma, these NADPH and AT have the energy to carry the process of photosynthesis to go on. So these two help the Kelvin cycle, or the light independent reaction. And what happens in that, in the Kelvin cycle, carbon dioxide enters, and as these two molecules right here, they help to this process to reduce carbon. So you can imagine that this energy stored molecule, this NADPH, has hydrogen with it. So now this hydrogen can be used to reduce, or to give carbon the hydrogens in order that it can make glucose, C6H12O6. It helps to make glucose, and when these two molecules are used, they go back as NADP plus, because they lost their electrons, and so when you lose an electron you get a positive charge, and ADP plus a phosphate group. So the light reaction and the dark reaction, this is just an overview of what happens, and in the next video we're going to go study in detail on the light reaction, and in the video later that we're going to study about the dark reaction. So hope you find that useful, and see you in the next video.